Please make sure your mics are muted. This is mainly for the speakers because we won't open for oral interventions by other participants. We are simply too many to do that. But if you have questions or comments, you're welcome to write them in the chat. And there will probably be time at the end to take some questions from the chat. And in any event, the speakers have confirmed that they are happy to follow up in bilateral exchanges, and you will find their details on the slides and their website. And with that said, I suggest we start on the actual program. It's fairly self-explanatory, but I wish first to share a few remarks on the idea we had behind organizing this webinar. First, as many of you will be aware, the EU adopted the fourth version of its so-called Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, also known as the EPBD, in 2024. And the deadline for the member states to transpose the requirements of the directive into national law is in May next year. So in all member states, there is currently work on the way to do that. And the legislator agreed on quite a lot of changes to the EPBD, some of which are technically or politically complicated. So this is quite a significant effort. And some of the changes relate to digitalization, for example, a new requirement for member states to establish national buildings databases. That can, of course, be seen as a burden or an effort by the authorities that will need to do that, but it's there for good reason. And a key thought of today's event is really to try to show with the concrete examples what kinds of payback of this initial effort from the member state side that one can hope and expect to emerge once access is provided to data. Fostering data exchange across sectors is also key for smart and energy flexible buildings, and that's one of three topics which the EU Data for Energy expert group is focusing on, and today's discussion may also provide inspiration for that work stream. Secondly, apart from EPBD implementation, the EPBD also requires the member states to prepare national building renovation plans, so-called NBRPs, and submit the first draft by the end of the year. So the plans are already under preparation in each member state with input from all concerned stakeholders. And these plans, they have the potential to play a key role as a shared investment plan and a roadmap for decarbonizing and renovating the building stock, not just over the coming few years, but in the coming decades. And it's really also an opportunity to have important discussions and decisions in each member state on what policy measures to prioritize at national level, what parts of the building stock to focus on and when, and how to best design social safeguards when needed, and how to mobilize the necessary public and private investments. It's also an opportunity for companies to seize the business potential in this transformation. And the examples we'll see today are examples of businesses that are trying to do just that. They are not subsidized by the EU, these companies you'll see today. So we thought it was be timely and inspiring to see how such data-driven approaches can disrupt a variety of processes of relevance for the EPBD implementation by speeding up or optimizing things, whilst at the same time bringing down costs. Thirdly, another reflection, why do we have a particular Danish focus in this afternoon's program? Well, Denmark holds the presidency of the Council right now, but so it did for the first time in 1973, the year that Denmark joined the EU. And it was in Copenhagen that year that the heads of state and government, triggered by the global oil crisis in 73, took the initiative to formulate a new European energy policy, a policy that from the outset included goals on reducing both energy demand, but also reducing Europe's dependence on imported fossil fuels. And Denmark has historically also had a strong focus on digitalization and data. It set up a national building database already in 1976. And while that was initially and primarily intended for taxation purposes, it quite quickly integrated energy aspects as well and has been useful for that as well. And Vincent will shortly say more about Denmark's work on the perspective on data. And finally, let me say a few words on the EU's renewed focus on competitiveness and simplification, including the so-called Omnibus initiatives launched since this commission started. We sometimes hear concerns that this simplification drive would somehow change the direction or green goals agreed upon in the last mandate. Let me be very clear on this in my introduction here. This simplification drive is there to facilitate delivery, not to deregulate or to change the aims. As President von der Leyen put it herself the other day when she held the State of the Union speech in front of the European Parliament, she said, I quote, "We must stay the course on our climate and environmental goals. The science is crystal clear, and the economic and security case is equally compelling. In fact, this transformation is central to our push for independence because it reduces our energy dependence, because circular production limits our strategic dependencies." End of quote. And also when Mario Draghi, in his progress assessment of 1 year after his publication of the competitiveness report, he also stressed that this is not about shifting direction, but about doubling down and accelerating. To again quote, he said, "Decarbonization is the best long-term path for Europe to achieve energy independence despite its lack of natural resources, but it requires much faster investment to make a renewables-heavy system work." So to conclude, it's clear where we have to go, but we need to be smarter and go faster. And that's really very much the thought behind today's webinar, to inspire all of you that this is feasible and indeed attractive. So with those words, let me hand over to my co-host Vincent for his introductory remarks. Vincent?
Thank you, Niels, and thank you for the introduction. As Niels said, I'm Vincent Rudnicki. I'm a head of unit, director here at the Danish Energy Agency, where my unit is responsible for our national policy, energy efficiency policy regarding buildings, and what we call the utility digitalisation program, as a very easy word, which I will say a few words about later in my relatively short introduction here. First of all, I want to start out by saying thank you to the Commission and the DG Energy and your team, Niels, for taking the initiative to organize the event, and great to see both the speakers and the many participants on this important topic. It will be, and it is a great challenge to implement the new EPBD directive and to ensure a zero-emission building stock by 2050. But as everyone in this digital room probably agrees on, it's also a very important task, as we all know, to reduce and optimize the energy we use in buildings through, for example, energy renovations that can ensure energy savings, a more healthy building stock, as well as mitigating high and fluctuating energy prices, which is also in line with the Danish EU presidency's aim to advance initiatives and measures that can strengthen Europe's security of supply, competitiveness, and support the green transition, of course, as you said as well. I would like to spend a few minutes and give a few words on what you can say called the Danish political approach to energy efficiency in buildings and in the connection to data, and therefore also a few words on how we will be implementing the buildings directive, though we are still working on securing our government mandate regarding the specific implementation. The Danish approach to energy efficiency in buildings can be said to rest on three main pillars, where the first one is the continuing improvement of energy efficiency or the energy performance of both new and existing buildings through, for example, the regulations in our building code that make sure that new buildings are built very energy efficient and that existing buildings are being renovated in compliance with the code, with the buildings code, combined with the government grants and deduction schemes. Our second pillar focused on decarbonization, where we are making sure that the building's heat sources are renewed. We are expansion our district heating and heat pumps to phase out the remaining oil and gas boilers. And our third pillar regarding energy efficiency is focused on improving energy performance of buildings through the better use of data and digital tools. We believe, and studies also show that and our experiences as well that there is a great potential of reducing buildings' energy demand through digital optimization and through database tools. And furthermore, we believe that the use of data can, as we will probably also see today, make it easier for building owners to decide on and implement measures that curb and reduce their energy consumption. And to support this third pillar, the Danish government, in the latest digital strategy from 2024, decided that the Danish Energy Agency should initiate what we call, as I mentioned, the Utility Digitalisation Program, through which we work with a range of partners, both in the utility sector, but also interest organizations and a range of companies that specialize in improving energy efficiency through data. The goal of the program is to securely reduce the transaction costs of access and working with especially utility data, but also other forms of data that can help especially building owners with reducing the energy consumptions. So right now we are, for example, working on initiatives that should make it easier to access and share data on, for example, district heating energy consumption, making it easier for the consumers to improve their energy efficiency systematically. It is therefore also great that we today can continue this discussion on how we can simplify building renovations and implement the EPBD with digital tools and new business models with the relevant stakeholders, and look closer to how digitization can contribute to building renovations and improving the overall energy performance of buildings. And I also think that today's webinar underscores how Danish businesses can contribute to working effectively with digital solutions as part of the green transition. So I look very much forward to hearing the presentations on how their solutions can help contribute with more productive tools in regard to the energy efficiency of buildings. So I think that will be the words for me, and back to you, Niels.
Thank you very much, Vincent. Yes, and let's get into it then. We have four interesting companies lined up that have been allocated roughly half an hour each. If some of them do it shorter, we'll proceed directly with the next presentation, and then we'll make for a little panel discussion and questions at the end, to the extent we have time for that. But let's start. The first one is Martin Collignon from Plans. Martin.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? And more importantly, can you see my face? Yep, wonderful. Then next step, I'll try to share my screen. Wonderful. I think we should get there. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, I didn't know so many people were interested in EPCs, and if I'd known so many were there, I would have not said yes, because now I'm very scared. So we'll see, and I'll do my best. So I'm Martin. I'm the CEO and one of the two co-founders of Plans. And today I want to talk about the future of EPCs and how we make EPCs useful. All right. So taking a step back, why are we even doing this? I think there's a lot of focus on making EPCs better, but the actual focus should be on making sure we have a zero emission building stock by 2050. And so when we make better EPCs, the goal should be to get closer to that goal. And I think sometimes it's a bit forgotten, and that's why I'm hopefully going to talk a little bit about that. So we're in a bit of a rush. This is a graph, a chart from back from 2022 from Bruegel. I think the state hasn't changed that much, so it's not like we've suddenly gotten much faster. But now we are getting somewhere where the curve is getting a lot steeper. So we need to do something. In Denmark, we have what we believe, and I think that is true, the best EPC in the world, not only because it's very expensive, but because we also collect a lot of data. But the fact of the matter is, if you ask the people that should use it, the people that all looking at it every day, tradespeople, banks, etc., when you ask them, they don't think it's sufficient. It's not good enough. And in that sense, you can collect a lot of data and you can have very expensive EPC, or at least more expensive than other places. It's still not good enough. And we know that to get this building stock down to zero emission, we need everyone. We need surveyors, we need the tradespeople, we need the building owners, of course, we need the financial institutions, and we need the authorities and governments. What all of them need to do their job and to get that building stock down to zero is to understand whether something is worth doing in a house. If it's not worth doing, it's going to be incredibly difficult. And that goes for all stakeholders. So the surveyor, he needs to understand it's worth it for him to do a great job. Tradesperson, well, they need to understand if they're going to make money on an installation. Building owner, well, what's the ROI? And the ROI doesn't need to be financial. It can also be what's the comfort, etc. The bank needs to know whether they're going to get their money back, and the government needs to know whether there's some sort of socioeconomical or regulatory goal meeting by doing that. And we believe that today, where we're focusing a lot is on what is the existing state. How is the building stock today? A little bit on the potential states. I think that's what we're doing now more and more with the building renovation passport, with some of the audit énergétique in France, for example, where there's more focus on what can be in the future. We believe that still, when you look at how much it costs, it's actually a very difficult question to answer, if it's answered at all. And is it worth it? It's something that is almost never answered by the data that we have today. An example is in Denmark. So this is my colleague's sleeping sleeping room. This is his room today. And if you look at how it is translated, it looks like this for a surveyor. And then at the end, it looks like this. And the point is, it is actually very difficult if you take a moment yourself to describe the room that you're in. Describing something in 3D with words is incredibly complicated. It requires a lot of words. And you don't need to think about the entire room. You can think about a single window, how complicated it is to describe it. And if you describe with words, how able will the other person on the other side be able to draw it, for example, or to imagine in their head? And that's a bit the problem, is that we are playing with 3D data, very complicated things. Some things we can't even see because they're behind walls. And we try to make them legible. So it ends up being a lot of words. And because it ends up being a lot of words, we spend a lot of time describing in 3D in words. And that means also we get fewer data because we have to focus. We have to get everything through. And the fact of the matter is that even in Denmark, where again we have more time than many countries, and we spend more money, it's still the same. The surveyors spend a lot of time of their brain power just translating 3D to text. And the vast majority of insight is just never captured. It's never anywhere. It stays in the surveyor's head. And usually after 2 days, when he's visited 2 or 3 more places, he's completely forgotten anything. So we lose a lot of the actual core data that is key for making the transition to zero emission building stock happening. So if you look at so today we are in a state where you understand sort of what the existing state is, but it's not as good as we need it to be. For example, if you give an aggregated area of windows for a home, it's not useful for someone who's changing windows. For someone who installs heat pump, if he doesn't know if there's enough space in the basement or not, he will not be able to install heat pump, for example. So we get some information about the existing state, some information about the potential state. Very rarely an accurate picture of how much it costs, because it's usually an average for a country, a region, and zero data about whether it's worth it for the homeowner or anyone else, by the way. Tomorrow, so it just takes to change one window or to change one insulation, make a new room, or even the price of energy. If that changes, then suddenly everything is obsolete. You have to start from scratch. And that's, I think, what we can change with what we're doing. Because fundamentally, the problem here is if the data you capture and the data you get in the PDF or the XML file, whatever, is shit, you can do all the kind of analysis and put AI on top. What you're going to get at the end is still shit. It's going to be maybe a nicer shit, and you can make some predictions, but still it's going to be a prediction. What you need to do if you want to improve the right side here is actually to that not be shit. So if you look at specifically the Danish processes, but that goes for all the EPCs in Europe, we know that. There are 5 problems. One is something about data quality and consistency. So can you actually compare an EPC one to another? Then the next one is how much time does it take to get that sort of data and how much does it cost? The third one, which is a problem for a lot of authorities, is how can you actually verify whether it's been done correctly, which is also a way to ensure that it's been done correctly in the first place. Will it actually motivate people to do something about it? And the last bit is who can use the data for something to motivate the homeowner to do something about it, because we don't believe that homeowners alone can make a decision. They'll have to get a lot of help from a lot of different people to make the right decisions. So what we've built is basically an app that allows the surveyors to scan the buildings in 3D very rapidly. So we hit 99% precision areas. So when we do all A/B tests with the surveyors, we win every single time, because it's just easier to capture all the windows and to not forget one. It captures all the orientation, sloped, knee walls automatically. You get the immediate feedback, so you don't have to wait to get back to the office to see if things were scanned correctly. You get immediately on your phone. And what we also add on top of that scanning is annotations. So you will take, just like we take pictures, we will annotate in 3D where the boiler is, where the thermostat is, where the radiator is, and it allows you to make your EPC report at the end very easily. And also, of course, have all the data you can use for other stuff. And then to ensure that you get everything, you don't forget anything, we allow for what we call showstoppers. So after each room or after each story, we'll ask a question, hey, did you remember to capture X, Y, or Z? So it takes 10 to 15 minutes to scan an average single-family home. So that's 130 square meters in Denmark. We get rid of all the manual calculations or rule of thumbs that we know exist for linear thermal losses, for example. Any documentation, so pictures, that's just a tap. And of course, if you need more descriptions, you can just talk to your phone and then it will transcribe it. That's the magic of AI these days. And then if you're multiple parties working on the same property, so for example, you have an electrician and you have maybe someone who's doing evaluation of property, they will be able, of course, with consent of the homeowner, to reuse the model, so they don't have to start from scratch, and they can just add, you could say, their layer of data that is interesting for them. For verification, I mean, the first verification is important, is the internal one. So of course, more surveyors are part of larger companies, and they need to verify or even just help the colleagues that might need specific help because there's a weird material or something like that. The 3D model allows you very easily to figure out if there's something that's wrong or not, if something has been missed or not. If there's a gap, you will see it. But of course, that makes it easier for, if there's any sort of external audit, to also prove the work you've done, and for the auditor to see if there's anything that's missing or wrong. So it is incredibly flagrant if there's a mistake in the calculations when you see sort of this model. When you have way more in-depth model, which you get with a 3D model, that makes it possible for everyone to collaborate. So again, that could be the bank, that could be the insurance companies, the governments for subsidies. They can all get that sort of data and use it for, you'd say, their angle of the building renovation transition. And when we have that core data, that also means if there's some updates, so for example, energy price is updated, or the calculation engine is updated, or technology has improved, it's very easy to change these things. So also the Article 19, I think, of the EPBD says that we should be able to get, a new EPC if you do a change. So it could be, changing from a boiler to a heat pump or district heating or getting new windows. That is incredibly easy to do. You can literally just click on element and then say, hey, I've changed it to something else. Then of course there's you need to prove, etc. But the point is to change it to recalculate an EPC. It's literally 2 clicks. So that's also the what is absolutely magic with 3D. That is possible. It is not possible with the XML files that you see that we have currently. And then finally, the data can be translated to anything. So it's 3D, universal data. So whether you're the government, again, or a tradesperson, financial institutions, or the building owner, the data, the raw data can be used for what you need. It could be in the future for, doing some interior design, or planning how you're gonna, move rooms or get a new, or, break diagonal wall or whatever. It can basically be used for a lot more purposes where the EPC in the XML or PDF has a very constrained use, and has a sort of common, data, which is useful and great for comparison, but also limiting because for example, the heat pump installer that I was talking about before, he will need to know how big the basement is. The solar installer, he will need to see if there's space for more breakers in the circuit, in the electrical panel, for example. And that's the kind of stuff that is relevant for that, and that is captured for the EPC, but that might not appear in the final EPC report. And that's the kind of stuff that we can do as well. So today we are live in Denmark with EPC assessors, with valuers, so people who go around buildings and have an opinion on how much they're worth for banks, and also realtors. The way that we work is that we're compatible with existing processes and software. So we usually replace pen and paper, and we just integrate into the existing software. It's faster, so this is proven. It's also higher quality than what we do today. That is also proven. And finally, it's more engaging and driving more action. And that's not only me saying that. We have a wonderful case study with one of the homeowners, where back in February, they made an EPC and a scan was made for the EPC. The property was sold, and then the future owner used the material that we produce in collaboration with one of the realtors to get some tradespeople involved, to get the mortgage, and also to then finally start the renovation. And what we're very proud of, and that's not to say that the Danish EPC is not good, that's what Pernille here and Thomas are saying, is that they would have wished they could have this data when just considering buying a property, and that is in contrast to the current energy label. So we are, of course, incredibly proud, and this is for us, the proof that we can actually make the transition to zero emission building stock faster. So that's something that we're very stoked about and something that is live today. But what we're building is also ready for tomorrow. So we are live now before the EPBD is enacted in all the member states, but we are ready to update our model with any sort of new requirements coming with the EPBD. If some people are using actual energy consumption, we are very happy to use that as well. So we think it's a wonderful way to verify whether something has been done correctly. It can also show some things that pure material assessment cannot do. We believe it's something that has to be used in combination, because what the actual energy consumption won't tell you is what is in the walls, for example, or what is the type of windows that they have. It respects privacy in the sense that, as you saw, it's a dollhouse model, and we also get the consent from the users. So we are, it is already living up to the Article 16. We can automatically produce renovation passports with a feasibility study, which we believe is incredibly important. So feasibility is certainly a missed aspect today. The cost of new data points is negligible. What we see today is if you try to scale the current way of doing EPCs, it's going to be incredibly expensive, incredibly difficult to add new data points. So many things that we think are need to have or becomes nice to have. You want all data. It actually matters if you capture all the thermostats. It actually matters if you understand how big a room is for getting in a unit of a heat pump. That is what is required, and also for potentially in the future new types of reports that could be about climate proofing, which is, at least in Denmark, a big topic. So that means, if you have a building in a flooding zone or potentially flooding zone, how can you ensure that? How can you know if there is value in the basement, for example? For that, you will need to know where the door is. You'll need to know, how is it around? What is there anything of value in the basement? And that's something that, again, is incredibly easy to capture. So we can do very easily an EPC plus, or add other stuff. In Denmark, for example, there is a condition reports. In France, I know there are like 9, 10, 11 reports you have to do. That's something that can be combined. It's very cheap and easy to add these data points. If you have any single measure improvements, we can produce it with 2 clicks that I showed before. And finally, we believe, incredibly easy to verify and control. It's something that we've discussed as well with the Danish Energy Agency, where they've tested the product and seem to be relatively happy about what we could provide them when we get there. All right, so I speak incredibly fast. I think I didn't diverge from that as usual, so I hope that you guys could understand what I said. For us, so we are ready to partner with any country. We are used to doing pilots both with our customers, but also with authorities. So if anyone wants to test how the product could work in the country, just let us know. If you're not interested in that, I think when you are considering how to implement EPBD, you will really need to think whether you're just implementing it for compliance or usefulness. Technology will come and make what can feel like hard requirements or big requirements to actually be very easy. I think I talked with someone from an energy agency somewhere in Europe, and they said, well, you just implemented what EPBD asked you to do without any need of legislation. And the answer is yes, because technology is catching up. How the product and other products similar to ours, potentially, could be doing, and what it demands is detailed building information. So for us to being able to use our data for tradespeople, financial institutions, etc., we need to find a way to share it with them. And if you believe very strongly that there's nothing that we can share about buildings, it makes it incredibly difficult. That's in general. And more specifically, anyone can measure a wall. You could probably get a monkey to do it. What is very difficult and where it requires specialist skills is understanding what material the wall is made of. That makes a big difference in the U values and the linear thermal losses, etc. And for that, in Denmark, we are incredibly privileged that most municipalities have made all the building permits available for most buildings, or I guess all buildings. If they have any building permits, any construction permits, all the documents will be there publicly available or behind some sort of login with my national ID. And that means I can understand better than I guess what is in the walls. And I think that is, so what is inside the wall is actually incredibly important because it makes a difference whether you can add insulation or not, for example, or how much space there is in for insulation. So that's a requirement that is not only valuable for 3D models, it's in general. If there are ways for you to get the building permits digitalized and available for at least the surveyors, that will heighten dramatically the quality of your EPC and your understanding of buildings. That's also not necessarily about climate. It could be about asbestos, for example, which we know is very important in Europe. And then the last point is the way you're going to implement EPBD, ensure that if someone comes with better data and wants to provide better data, they are allowed to do so. So when we look at some of the legislation around Europe, as it is today, you are sort of forced to use certain values. So they are simplified methods which actually constrains the precision that would be required to make a great EPC that is useful for other parties, including the homeowners. So when you are thinking about implementing the EPBD, really think about, okay, am I limiting better data so we could get better outcomes, be it for the building audits, energetic audits, or more in-depth anything related to feasibility? Just please, on behalf of myself, but I guess any other startups in your own country, ensure that you really think about what if someone had a lot better data, could they use it in the current legislation? I think that is it. So if you are like Denmark and you want your country to get the most useful EPC in the world, do not hesitate to hit me up, either on LinkedIn or my emails here. Don't all call me right now, but otherwise, I'm very happy to take any discussions offline afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Martin. And you were indeed speaking very quickly. So and haven't used your time, but as I said, I think we will then use that to extend the discussion towards the end. For now, I would suggest and I see there is already a quite lively debate in the chat. You can, of course, the speakers are welcome to look at that when you can and think about which ones to react to at the end and how. Meanwhile, I suggest we move on to the next one, which is Tim Jensen from Domotech Commercial TV Syd, who will talk about commercial real estate portfolio management. Tim, please. You're muted, Tim.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Somebody in your organization muted me, Niels. So
okay. Big brother, no doubt.
Exactly. I'm just going to share my screen. 2 seconds. There we go. Can you see it now?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. All right. First of all, hi everyone. I'm Tim Jensen. I work at Domotech in Denmark. And before I start my presentation, I would like to say thank you to the Commission, and especially thank you to you, Niels, and your team. I think this is a very, very good initiative. and the more that we perhaps can help and inspire the audience today in various places in Europe with the experiences we have gathered for the last 2.5 years, the better that is. I work at Domotech. Today it's called Tyf Syd Domotech. I will elaborate on that name in a few seconds. But first, a little bit about our Danish operations. We are working in both the residential area of the real estate market and the commercial. The residential is by far the biggest area we work within. We do 31% of all the mandatory reports when it comes to selling your house. That is the property condition reports, the electrical inspection reports, and of course the EPCs on the residential market. And then almost 3 or 2.5 years ago, we decided that we wanted to look into the commercial EPC market as well in a more professional point of view. And how that occur, I will come into in a couple of minutes. We are today 214 employees. Half of us are on the road every day doing advertising and certifications for the homeowners and for the commercial real estate market. So you can see this, it's quite a machine that has to be running every day. We do over 60,000 reports every year. So last year, we were bought by a very large German company, and I guess that most of you of the audience know this company. It's Tyf Syd. Tyf Syd is one of the biggest TIC companies in the world, and by TIC, it's meaning testing, inspection, and certification. So overnight, one summer night last year, we went from being 214 employees to part of 30,000 employees. And that being said, it's actually very, very nice because there are so much experience and so many specialists within this company that it's incredible. And all of that are we, of course, getting into Denmark, most of it, when it comes to the real estate business. And we are trying to see if we can help our international colleagues with the stuff we have done in Denmark. We are located over 1,000 places worldwide, and the company have over 160 years of experience. So quite a big company. But what we're going to talk about today is how we work with the commercial portfolio owners in Denmark. We have built a software called Domosearch. And it was actually most of softwares and ideas, you know, are based on something which currently appears, and we discovered that the Danish Energy Agency, not frequently but sometimes, changes the core on how you calculate the EPC, but nobody knows about it. So that means that you have a lot of portfolio owners which think they have some kind of real idea on how the portfolio looks like on an energy on a EPC level, but if it should be updated today, the reality would be completely different. So the matrix we have built here, as you can see up in the right corner, is quite simple. We go out to the client and say, okay, if you give us your data, we're going to combine that data with public data and our data, and then we have a completely new data set which have much more value for the client than the data they gave us. And in this case here, it's of course all the addresses. And I need to mention, just on a side note, that I know that we are very fortunate when it comes to public data, especially within the real estate market. We have so many databases that is quite easily accessible for companies like us and for the companies that you're gonna listen from today.
Tim,
Yes.
Can I just stop you there? There is a little pop-up on your window. If you could say skjul there. Yeah.
All right, sorry. Yes, thank you. I thought it was local. Okay. Anyway, Domosearch provide simplicity, but it also provides key functionalities. So it gives the portfolio owner an overview which they haven't seen before. When we launched this system, and we did actually that together with the Danish Property Federation, they have over 6,000 members, and our business case is very simple. We give this software for free, and then we have like the rights to give quotations on doing the EPCs afterwards. When we either have done the overview, the advisory, or the consultancy when it comes to that. So it gives a good overview. It also gives you an overview about what kind of properties can we actually move up the ladders without doing any kind of investment, because the calculation core have been changed since we got the last EPC. And then, of course, and I will come into that in a little later, we are working with so many different strategies when it comes to those portfolio owners. But I'll tell you that in a few seconds, because we're going to a live demo within a couple of minutes. Just a status right now, we have been online with this system for like 2 years now. We have over 50,000 properties within the system. We are working closely together with 300 portfolio owners and asset managers in Denmark. The portfolios varies between around 30 million euros and up to 20 billion euros. So it is like the biggest portfolio owners in Denmark, which we're working together with this system here. So just to simplify it a little bit, I have translated it. Oh, that was the wrong button. There we are, into English, and there is a little funny story about this, which I would like to share with you. First, we discussed how to present it in here, and then some of my colleagues said, "Okay, can't you just translate it live in Google Translate?" And then I tried to do that, but when you shorten energy marks in Denmark, it's shortened EM. But when you translate that, Google Translate think I'm talking about the European Championship in football. So it gives me a column with the EPCs, which are calling European Championship in football, and that might confuse some. So we did it like this. So what we're going to look in within a couple of minutes in the live version is, now you're going to see it in English. Then we're going to see it in the Danish version. I'll take you through it. So up in the left corner, you can see, and this is not uncommon, a portfolio owner which have like 778 buildings within his portfolio. You can see the range of the energy of the EPCs. And in the left corner, and I just want to make another side note here, you can see it varies from A 2020 down to a G. And hopefully today we even have time to talk a little bit about the harmonization. Also, when we're going to implement the EPBD, the harmonization and the harmonization plans on the EPCs across Europe. One thing I do know when I talk to some colleagues in Niels's department is that we are going to harmonize the letters we're going to work with in the future across Europe. So we don't going to have in the future A 2020, A 2015, or A in Denmark 2010, or A plus or whatever. We're just going to have an A down to a G, and that even that little detail makes it very much more simple for all of us. If we go back to the presentation, you can see that up in the right corner, we have the 3 low-hanging fruits, which all the portfolio owners are very much interested in it. It's normally we call it the jaw-dropping meeting when we show them that. You have to remember that most of the clients we are working with are like pension funds or have buildings for a big amount of money, and they all have a very green image. So it's not a good thing either to have missing EPCs or expired EPCs, especially not when you have to be compliant with the law. And what is also interesting for them is how many of EPCs can I actually have a new EPC which is better without doing any kind of investment, because then I can invest my money in some of the other buildings in my portfolio. And in the right corner down, you can see some of the other products we serve. For our clients, we do all the certificates, we do the DGNB, the BREEAM and the LEEDs, of course. We do have the climate risk reports as well, so we can predict according to the 28 different hazards that are defined by EU, what kind of risks you will be exposed to, that property will be exposed to in the future, and how to avoid it. Of course, we do have the EPCs. We have lift management and live consumption data, some part of Europe. And then, of course, we do help our clients to be compliant with the taxonomy. So now we go to the live demo. And I just take some water here. And that should be here. You see my screen, Niels?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. So this is actually real data. We just made a fictive client here, so we took some properties here and there, and then we combined it in to a fictive client called Show Property up here. This URL they get here is untraceable, so that means after we got the addresses and we have put them into the system, we just have this first meeting, which we call a wow meeting, where they see all the findings we are going to find within the portfolio. Because you have to remember that until they have seen this, most of the portfolio owners are working with decentralized Excel sheets, where each property have their own line in this Excel sheet. Suddenly now they are getting an entire overview about the entire portfolio. And then they get some red cheeks when they can see that they have missing EPCs or expired EPCs, or at least some EPCs that can have a new mark without doing any kind of investment. So those are the three low-hanging fruits we start to work with when we get a new client. And we can click here, and you need to know that everything in here is clickable. So we click here, and there we can see all the different properties which are, at least on the paper, allowed to get a new EPC, which should be better. So only a slight examples are going the other way around. Okay, so as you all know, there is no data system which is more clever than the data which are actually within the system. And all that data we have in here have been gathered by some kind of energy consultant, energy engineer, whatever, who have been on site on the property sometimes in the past. So of course we rely on those data. So if a client say, okay, I would like to have this one updated, then this is not something we are going to do on a desktop level. We have to have a consultant on the on-site to make sure that the data is actually correct, because when you're working with human beings, mistakes can occur and somebody can have a bad day. So this consultant could perhaps report that this property had 100 millimeters of insulation, and that is not true, because there is actually only 40. If it's not possible to remove this mark a little up, then of course we don't charge the client, because then it's the system's issue that the data is wrong. But normally it is doable. When that has been done, we will of course look into the missing ones and the expired ones. So we actually try to say to the client, it's better in the future to be on forehand instead of on backhand. And in here you can see when all the previous EPCs had expired, and you can even, if you want to, set up an alarm so you can know, okay, what kind of EPCs will expire next month and the month after that, so we can actually start to do some kind of budgeting. So we know how much money we need to do to make the EPCs in the future. So when we have cleaned up in the portfolio with all those three areas here, we can start actually to work with the portfolio. So we click here at the number, and then you can see all these portfolios buildings down here, and everything in here is clickable. So in Denmark, and I'm not sure whether that's the same in the rest of Europe, but in Denmark it is like this, that if you move your property from a D to a C, and you can show that you have done significant renovations on the property, then you actually have the right to raise the rent. So of course the portfolio owners are interested in looking for the deeds first to see how can we move them. Normally we see, I'm just gonna point out a good example here. We see normally that this one could be good, that they would like to work within the range of up to 10% up to the next market, up to the next letter, because then it's within a financial reach for them to look into. So we click on this. This is a randomly property. We click on this. Then we have all the core data here from the property. We even have the previous EPC, so you can go in and read that. And down here we have what we call renovation suggestions to improve the property. So it is like a guideline for the clients to click here. So we click here, and then it's going to open up a one-pager, a guideline, and I guess that you're also going to see this. We needed 6%, and then you can see some of the different areas which we could actually do in here. That could be solar cells. We could go in and renovate the roof and the attic. You can see what would it cost, how much would you save on energy, on CO2, sorry, per year, and etc. So this is like a guideline for the client and say, okay, we would like to move further with this property. Can you put a man on site and then make a fully report on how to improve this property? When we first started in 2023, we saw that the portfolio owners were quite conservative, so they just wanted to see how costful it would be to move one mark up in the EPCs. But today we actually see that they are quite ambitious. So it's not only one mark. So if you have like a D mark, they normally say, okay, how much would it be to go to a C, and how much would it be to go even up to a B? Because sometimes it's actually a good thing to do both. Plenty renovation that could be when you have the scaffold up and standing through the envelope of the building, that you should perhaps not only change the windows, but also do some more insulation in the wall or whatever it could be. So this system here gives the portfolio owners an idea about what is our low-hanging fruits in the portfolio, combined with that strategy we have made. So some say that we need to be on a EB level with every building we have in the portfolio within 2030, and then we start to work on a portfolio level with the client. So that being said, because we could talk for ages about what kind of data you could pull out of this system here, but that being said, I thought that the invitation for this webinar today was actually quite interesting, because what have we helped the portfolio owners with in the past 2 years when it comes both to the overview, advisory, and the consultancy. So I went down to the 2 seconds here. I have switched right now, Niels, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
perfect. So I went down to our IT department and asked them if they could extract some data for me. So in the last 2 years, we have helped carry it out either via overview, advisory, or consultancy for 3,792 EPCs within this system. 1,092 buildings didn't have a EPC before, which they actually should have according to law. And what is most important and impressive here is that 2,700 have gotten an EPC, which are even better than the previous one, and some of them even more than one letter. And that kind of made us very proud with this. This also gives us some kind of conclusion here. So within those data, you can see here, we have actually helped via overview, advisory, and consultancy to reduce over 63.6 million euros per year in energy costs and 167,000 tons CO2 per year reduced by improving those buildings. Sometimes it's a little bit confusing to think about, okay, what is a ton CO2, because I can't compare it to anything. So I just did some kind of comparison, and to be honest, I AI'd it, but I did do something else. I called the Danish Chamber of Commerce, their climate department, and I asked them about those numbers, and they confirmed actually that the numbers are correct. So just for your imagination, how many trees do you think are needed to absorb 167,000 tons of CO2 per year? And I just let it be there for 2 seconds to get a drink here, and then you can think about it. 12 million trees do we need to absorb that kind of CO2. So that actually means that to have it in an area, we need to cover the entire Manhattan with trees to absorb that kind of CO2. That being said, I would like to say thank you for your time. If you want to reach out, I mean, if you want to have a chat, if you want to collaborate or whatever, please don't hesitate to send me an email. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tim. Very interesting and inspiring, I think. There continues to be a very lively debate in the chat, which is great. And I suggest that now that you're not speaking, you're welcome, as Martin already did, to respond to some of the questions directly that were addressed to you or relevant for you in the chat. Okay, so you're welcome to do that. If you're interested, we can also do it at the end. But for now, on the stage, we move on to the third presentation. And I'm really happy to welcome Magnus Nørbo, CEO of the company Legacy, who will be speaking about simplifying carbon accounting for commercial real estate portfolios. So we stay in the commercial real estate for now. Magnus?
Thank you. Let's see if I can get the presentation up here. Here we go. Thank you for having me. My name is Magnus. I'm the CEO and founder of Legacy. We're working on directing capital towards decarbonization. As the other participants here, we're mainly focused at buildings, and that's also why our insights might be relevant in the discussions on the new legislation. We're mainly focused on the challenge for real estate with utility consumption and emissions related to utility consumption, so running, powering buildings. There's a huge both opportunity, but also carbon footprint related to real estate in general. We work with some of the biggest portfolio owners in Denmark and in UK, and are slowly branching out to other parts of Europe. The main driving forces that we see as climate change, or the physical risk that either real estate is exposed to through weather events or the like. Then there's capital markets. We're beginning to see small trends on green premiums, so a high value on a building that's certified green compared to a high emitting building. That's also beginning to move into the financial sector, where banks, alternative finance are assessing the risk of emissions. And then there's compliance, CSRD, the building directive, similar, where there's certain standards that you need to live up to. We mainly see that there's a driving force from investments or pension funds, where there's a huge awareness about risk mitigation in the long holding times for portfolios. Similar, banks are looking at both physical risk, emission risk, the like, and also are beginning to see requirements on actually proving that they assess the mortgages and financing products that they are offering to physical assets like buildings. And then there's the property administrators that are typically offering services to the building owners themselves, helping with operationalizing all the requirements for the building. So to take a case here, we have an anonymized case study from one of our clients, large pension fund, large real estate investor. They have been faced by a lot of the compliance requirements on carbon accounting. Main pains is collecting consumption data, time-consuming, tedious. There's major gaps, or have been, in how you get data. Then there's the auditability. You need third-party attestations to actually get a full audit. For bigger real estate owners, it's a requirement that you get your auditor to look through your carbon accounting, both the baseline years, the current status years, but also the roadmap for decarbonization of portfolios. And then a lot of tools out there have been black boxed, so there's no end-to-end trail of how the calculation is actually made. And then it's hard for many building owners to get an overview of the portfolio, figure out where to put in the right resources, invest to decarbonize. And then there's all the additional views where you can operationalize the data in asset overviews, specifically for asset owners. We have, through public data, seen now a way of helping a lot of building owners get hold of their own data on the buildings, turn it into direct decarbonization roadmaps, and also directly influence how they invest or divest in their portfolio. A lot of it is related to regulation. So we look at regulation where there's EUC policy frameworks like the building directive that are feeding into national building codes or implementations. That's then affecting first the bigger portfolio owners, where there's also different standards to operationalize all those requirements. Then there's certifications or reporting, and then also the direct choice of what material, what initiative that you're implementing on your building. A commercial real estate owner will mainly look at first, how can I collect and calculate proper emissions on my portfolio, both individual buildings, but also the full portfolio. Then when they have successfully gone through a full carbon accounting audit, they're looking to identify which buildings actually need some attention, whereas all the low-hanging fruits, where can we actually move buildings from brown to green, optimize or look for buildings where systems are not fully in place and could use investment. And then last step, figure out when you have all those low-hanging fruits or the low performers in the portfolio, you need to select what initiatives you actually need to do to move your building, both to de-risk your own portfolio, also to get more attractive loan terms. So we're beginning to see that banks are offering green bond loans in mortgages, so you can have slightly better loan terms. Right now, there's a lot of movement within the financial sector where indications, as we see it, is that the financial sector will be one of the main sectors to operationalize both the emission risk, but also emission opportunity of all physical assets. And that's where we're trying to then operationalize all the data needed to actually assess risk, opportunity, investment potential. We have, through the data that we can access in Denmark, in UK, and in some parts of Germany, developed a platform where you can go in, figure out the emissions, the current status baseline of any building. We're putting some annotation measures on individual personalized data, so we get above the threshold of GDPR-related data. But then all of a sudden, if you have access to utility consumption data, performance data on emissions and running a building, then you can begin to benchmark. Then you can begin to see what are all the potential buildings, both on a regional, national level, for us to decarbonize. As said, and as also presented in the description for this webinar, our main function has been to help with compliance reporting, green building certificates, organizing utility data from a rough stage into organized stage related to individual buildings and building owners. That have helped a lot of the really big building owners in Denmark, just getting hold of the data and getting it into a structure where it's usable, where they have full overview of consumption on the entire building stock. And we can do so by accessing a lot of the public data in Denmark. Right now, we have a functionality where you could search for any building in a portfolio, depending on either address, local building numbers, building owner, or the like. That's accessing parts of the public registry on ownership related to buildings. We can get master data on how the building looks, what materials are in general being used for the building. And that's organized more or less like this. All of the systems that we have in Denmark is an adaptation of a regulatory outline from the EU, then gone through a national implementation where we have good master data on square meters, more or less material used, building age. There's still some gaps, still some holes and bugs. So all that needs to be cleaned up and mapped and then made easily accessible for building owners, where we collect all the tables, we relate all the tables of ownership, like to first of all give a picture of what is actually within the building stock and within the portfolio. Then next step, we have an opportunity to access utility meter data on all utility types in Denmark. Right now, we have electricity, district heating, oil, wool, gas, wood pellets, and like, built still on a European framework, then a national implementation where that data can be accessed and delivered raw to the building owner, and through the right annexation measures also delivered to whomever is interested in the building. In a similar fashion, national systems that are and databases that are in play, but also allowing for individual meter providers or EMS systems of like, take all that data, clean it up, and make it available for the building owner to get an overview of performance, to begin to benchmark against peers, similar buildings. And when you have a good overview of how your buildings are performing, how your peers are performing on your building, then a lot of building owners begin to state, we need to do something, especially on the buildings that are, if you take science-based targets, the CRREM-aligned terminology, stranded as a potential, or have the potential to strand within a certain amount of years. Then you need to optimize the individual building. That's taking sort of, for example, the EPC recommendations that we've also seen here earlier, and begin to visualize what effect will actually have on the building, both on the theoretical consumption that are in the EPCs, but also on the actual consumption from the building. We see a quite big discrepancy between realized consumption, primary energy, and the theoretical consumption. But beginning to have a measure on where should we actually put our efforts, put in both the investment and the energy to get a better building stock. That's some of the overviews that the big portfolio owners are beginning to have. And it's still all related to regulatory outlines, national implementation. We have seen similar databases both on EPCs, consumption data, master data, available through a lot of countries throughout Europe. So we have all the means, all the data available. Some databases are not easy to access, some are unstructured, some needs to be related to each other in order to have this overview of where you actually need to invest. But getting all that data in, both on an operational side for the individual building owner, is really beneficial to get an overview of the portfolio. But the really interesting part for us is that you can begin to do proper benchmarking. So there's a bunch of benchmarking tools out there, both as certificates, as frameworks and the like, but most are based on top-down approach to how you relate individual building stock, building types, and what the ideal performance per square meter should be of that building. Now we can do bottom-up calculations, so we can collect all the single-family houses in Denmark. We can collect all the offices, all the industry areas, and look exactly at how each building are performing, emission per square meter, or energy consumption, kilowatt hours per square meter. And that will give us a really good indication of where the bottom 16 and 26% of the building stock is, where we should actually focus the energy on moving buildings if the main purpose is decarbonization or saving energy. This allows us to do some calculations like this one. We are taking all the Danish EPCs out there, try to categorize the bottom 16 of the worst performing buildings based on EPCs, and then we have taken the exact same EPCs and looked at how are the actual consumption from those EPCs. And we see that a bunch of EPCs that are of a poor rating actually performs like it's a really good building. So there is something out here where there's a lot of data accessible. We need to figure out how to utilize it in the right way. As we have also seen here earlier, there's a lot of good, valuable data in the EPCs. There's a good individual building benchmark in the EPC, and some decent recommendations could still be better. But we need to figure out how can we actually operationalize it the right way. Similar, we've done distribution of EPC rates where EPC rate A to B have a distribution of kilowatt hours per square meter per year that are quite different if you look at the utility meter consumption of those buildings. And one of the main things why this is important, besides the decarbonization and saving energy, is also because the building stock is price actually related to the EPC ratings, and that's due to the entire risk measure that both buyers, investors, and financial institutions are looking at buildings. So better EPC rating, lower risk, at least on paper, and then worse EPC rating, more risk. And that means that we'll have higher prices for buildings with better EPC rating, no matter how old they are. But if this entire model is based on a theoretical measure, then it's also at risk if all of a sudden legislation or the capital markets are moving towards meter data. Then we'll see a shift in potentially pricing and a bit of disclosure within that. The big investors already working with those insights. They are already divesting the portfolios, the part of portfolio that are looking quite bad from a utility consumption perspective, and don't have the benefits that we looked at with just getting a high EPC rate due to the papers or the calculation engine being updated. We foresee that this trend will feed down from the big investors, medium-sized investors, small investors. The banks know that this is a major risk, so it will also begin to influence the financial markets. And that's then back to the three driving forces. Climate change. Basically, climate doesn't care if a building is EPC rated A. It matters how much it emits. The capital markets, they're beginning to factor in meter data. It's part of the key PCAF scoring. Meter data on a building with supplier-specific emissions will affect how good a data rating you get on your building, and then also on your mortgage. By now, we from legacy sides see the EPBD, the building directive, as an opportunity to drive real change. We've seen the data available in more than 15 countries in Europe. It's in all databases. It's based on between 10 and 20-year-old legislation, but the databases are there. So we can begin to measure the building stock on live meter data. And there's a huge opportunity to actually have the building directive as a main driving engine, a green growth engine for the entirety of Europe. That's all I had.
Thank you very much, Magnus. I like that finishing sentence, and very inspiring indeed. And there is quite a few questions and comments also to your presentation in the chat. So please have a look at that now that you've ended the presentation. And we are off to our final speaker, Rasmus Høtoft, founder and CEO of Amalo. So the floor is yours, Rasmus.
Thank you, Niels. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. And yeah, just a quick check. Do everybody see me and hear me? Cool. I'll share my screen then. Actually, I'll wait share my screen. I'll just do it. I don't have a presentation. I'll just kind of explain a little bit about Amalo, the business. So I founded the business 6 years ago with the idea of using all the data that Denmark kind of publishes to all the companies. But instead of providing just the data, I wanted to build a sales machine that could actually scale the sales and the installations of the heat conversion of the heat pumps in Denmark, air to water heat pumps. The Danish government had a target for 2030 at the time that they wanted to convert all gas and bio and oil burners or boilers in Denmark. But for that to happen, they need to scale up the installation base with the rate of installations with tenfold, actually, more than tenfold. So I was like, as an entrepreneur, looking at how do we do that, and kind of got together with our software developer and thought out this idea that if we could collect the data from the public databases, do some calculations on how much they can actually save, because the average residential homeowner, he doesn't know how much kilowatt hours there is in 1 cubic meters of gas, and he's not able to do the total cost of ownership, or maybe he is, but it will take a lot of effort. So the idea was to present him with a compelling reason to buy a heat pump by just entering the address, answer a few questions, and then have a guided tour and a guided as a consultant to guide him through the whole purchasing process, and in that way be able to scale the sale of heat pumps. So before that, in Denmark, you could collect you could request 4 quotes from different installers, usual trades people. They would drive. I did that as a test, and they were driving more than 500 or 600 kilometers back and forth just to come and look at my boiler, look at my radiator, look at my house, and then drink some of my coffee and have a chit chat, and then go back again. Then I have to request the quote afterwards. So it was obviously a very ineffective way of selling. And only one of these 4 sales guys were getting my order. Nobody did in this case, but in general, that's like how much 20 to 25% was actually getting the order. So all the rest of the time and the transportation was just a waste. So what I will do is actually just go through in a live demo, showing you how the customer journey is, and kind of add some thoughts from the business perspective on the side. And then you'll also see how the salespeople operate, because one thing is to scale the communication and the compelling reason to buy for the customer, but the other side is to be able to have the business to be able to scale the installations as well. Yeah, so this is a small picture of me in a younger edition. So I'll just enter an address. This is like usually the customer will find an ad online that talks about how wonderful it is to get a heat pump. And they'll enter their address. And so the basic idea from the beginning was to combine the best part of e-commerce, because e-commerce, as you know, is very scalable. As long as you have goods on stock, you can pretty much sell as much as you want, because it's just the shipping. But doing service and installation, field services, is a whole different game. And when people have to purchase for like 15,000 euro through your web shop without you visiting their site, you have to build a lot of trust. So what we found out was that in a usual e-commerce web shop, you need to reduce the friction for people to buy. If you know you want the shoes, you just want as little clicks as possible before you have the item drop in the basket and shipped to you. But in this case, we found that it was actually very important to build trust throughout the customer journey. So you always ask for a little bit, then you give a little more, give something back, then you ask for something more, then you give something a little back again. And that's kind of a dialogue, of just automated dialogue that we had with the customer. That was the big finding in getting this customer journey to actually work. So you saw we just asked for them to click and enter their address. Now we're giving them a little bit with their customized, there's a window of a satellite image of their own house, so they kind of get a affiliation feeling to their own home. Then we see like a small tease on how much they can expect to save, and a picture of the heat pump. Now I just need to provide some more information. In Danish, this says, if you just give us some info, we can give you an exact quote, and we can give you an entire calculation or report that tells you how much you can actually save, and how long it will take for you to save this money back, or the payback time. Yeah. So we load the data from the building registry in Denmark. Ask a few questions. I don't want to translate all of this, but it's just why are you buying the heat pump? When do you expect to do it or to buy it? And if you like financing. So that's more like sales qualifying questions. Then we get all the data from we can see from the building registry that they have a gas boiler installed. And we want to ask how old it is because we're calculating the depreciation of the existing boiler. I'll just enter this actually. We can see when the building is erected, when it's built. So it's in 1961. And based on these data, and I think it's 90,000 EPCs, what do you call the energy? Yeah, energy labels on the houses, and we can actually estimate pretty accurately how much energy the housing will use. We ask for the consumption as well, and then we kind of compare those. Again, we see how much the square footage, the square meter there is in the building. Ask how many people that is there, and then how many showers are there. It's not really necessary. Then we, at this point, we already know, because we know how big the house is, we have pretty much dimensioned the heat pump in 9 out of 10 situations. There might be some adjustments, but that's pretty accurate most of the cases. But what we don't know is the distances between the components. So we asked them to place the boiler, the existing boiler. So I know in this case that it's located right here, and it's in this floor. And the domestic water tank is here as well. And when we do this, we calculate the distances, and then we just calculate how much piping and how much cabling is used. And we add that to the quote in the back. So when they're finished doing this, we actually know the pricing of the quote with 90 to 95% accuracy, which saves a lot of time for the sales guys. Instead of driving around in cars in Denmark, they can just sit in the office, talk to each other, and look at all the inbound leads that come in with all this data. And especially when they place the heat pump, which we're doing here, the heat pump consultant is evaluating if that location is good in terms of noise disturbances to the neighbors and so on. Yeah. So electricity consumption and how much gas they're using, I'll just say 1,300 cubic meters, very usual for a house like this. I'll just say test so I don't get a sales guy calling me in a minute. So, so you remember I said that we ask for something, click on this ad, and then you can get a good quote. Then enter your address, then you'll have an idea about how much you can save. Give a little bit more, and then you actually get the full report. So this is not the evaluated report or validated report yet. It's just the draft. But the customer gets an idea about what to think about and what to use when deciding to actually spend these 15,000 euro on a heat pump instead of going on their dream vacation. Because it's really the hard part. Get the money out of the customer to do this, make this decision, which we know is good. It is the right decision for them because they can't place the money in any better investment most of the time. But it's still a difficult choice or it's a huge decision to spend that much money on something that's really not your main interest, to be honest. Yeah. So we break the pricing down. So here's the big challenge here is to convey this information as simply and still accurate that the people actually understand it and can feel that it's their own and that they actually buy into it. One thing is to present a lot of data. That's easy. The hard thing is to have people actually experience the data and own the idea that this is correct and this is something that I agree with. So we break it down, we get a summary of here. and then we break it down. How do we arrive at these numbers? So in this case, we see 1,300 cubic meters of gas at a price in Denmark of approximately 2 euro. Gives this price a year compared to the heat pump. And they can actually change the values here themselves. If they don't believe, if they see they have another deal on gas, they can enter the price here. So it's 11 kroner. They can save it and all the calculations update. This is actually redundant in Denmark right now, but I can show you in a demo because from 1st of January, they kind of on the test, they removed the the tariff on the which is pretty much 50% of the electricity price in Denmark. But let's say they had 6,000 kilowatt hours of electricity consumption in Denmark. Then if they get a heat pump, then the consumption that they usually have to maybe charge their car would actually be reduced to 138. It will save like approximately 90 or 1 kroner per kilowatt hour, which will give them a reduction yearly on almost 2,000 kroner, which is a lot. But yeah, politicians changed that, so it's not it's pretty much redundant right now. Then the final thing, which is what the most people actually have a hard time understanding, is the fact that they can spend. They need to spend 15,000 euro on a heat pump, but they can get a new gas boiler for pretty much like 5,000 or 6,000 kroner, 6,000 euro. So why do you have to spend that much more money on a heat pump? And they know it's cheaper, but it's still a lot of money, and they have this holiday they want to go to. So we start talking about the CO2, which is of course important, but again, 9 out of 10, when they actually make the buying decision, it's because it's an economical, viable, or reasonable decision. So that's why the payback time, the breakdown of the payback time here is actually the most important thing. So we go through how we calculate all this. In this case, we take the difference between the cost of a heat pump. We deduct so we take the price of the heat pump, deduct the price of the gas boiler, and look at the difference in pricing. And then we divide the savings in heating and electricity consumption, and sum up the total savings that they have divided with the additional cost of buying the heat pump versus the boiler, and then come back at a time from when after 6 years and 1 month, they will they'll have caught up on the higher investment, and from there they will just save money each month. So usually they will look at it at first, then we'll call them, go through it, and kind of guide them on all the numbers that they don't understand or they want to have additional questions to. But during this process, we build trust because we show them a very transparent way of looking at the numbers and telling them about all these physics that goes behind how the energy balance in a house is. So if they hit this one, it's just show my quote. So this is the Danish stock draft. So they can actually not accept this quote right now because I haven't reviewed it and accepted it. But as I said, the sales guy has not done anything yet. This is all purely automatic. So it's like a web shop where there's each line represent a price, but behind each line there's a very specific cost where all the items that's needed and all the services from the tradespeople that's needed to fulfill this line in the quote is also added. So from behind the scenes, I know what the cost of each of these lines are. So it's pretty much an advanced web shop that we have, or e-commerce shop. Because the product is not something that you just ship from A to B, there is a lot of variability in the way that you need to do the installation. We also request videos. So they can sit on the web and scan this QR code, which will open up the web page, so they can use the phone to record videos. And there's an instruction on what to do. I need to film from where they want the heat pump located and all the way to the boiler room. And they always ask us if we can see enough from there. And I tell them that we have seen like approximately 20,000 videos of boiler rooms in Denmark. So we have a pretty good idea what's needed and what's not. Okay. So while we're talking, while I was doing this, I'll take a look at it from the sales guy's side. So here's my case. So heat pump installation, it's still in draft. I'll just go have a view on it. Now I haven't uploaded any videos, but if the customer uploaded videos, you'll be able to see it in here. And the sales guy can just say, okay, now there's a video of but you get a pretty good idea about how everything looks, and the customer usually talks video, so it gives us all the information that we need. And if we need, we'll just email them or call them and tell them to add more videos. So that means that we sold more than 2,000 heat pumps in Denmark. And
hang on, Rasmus. At least for me, there's a issue with the sound. Did you change anything?
No, but I can have a look. Just a sec.
Now it's okay again.
Is it better? Is it good now?
Yeah, now it's good again. Yeah.
Okay, so all right. So the idea is that the idea is to make it very easy for the customer to get a quote, and also get an idea about what's the incentive to buy the heat pump. In the meantime, on the other hand, it's also very important to get the salespeople to work very efficiently, because as I said, driving around Denmark is something that takes a lot of time and is very costly. So if we could scale the sales and give better quality, simply by taking all the sales stuff into the office and doing it on a platform like this, we can make a better business and convert more sales, and then ideally scale the sales of heat pumps to tenfold, as was the plan. All right, so I'll just go back and show you how. So this was.
And now the issue with the sound is there again. I wonder what's.
Okay, wait a sec. I'll just drop the headset.
You'll need to put on the mic, or we can't hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's better now. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. Now it is.
Yeah.
I think it was when you change something on the screen when you shared.
Actually, my phone that's connecting. I have an issue with this. I just set on flight mode.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So let's get back to the point where the sales guy get a notification in his CRM system that there's a new quote. He will go review it here. He'll look at all the info about the customer, and when he sees that the specified quote is okay, maybe he wants to add something. Maybe he wants to change it from this line to another.
You're not sharing your screen anymore, huh? So you need to reshare.
All right. There we go. Can you see my screen? Hear my voice?
Yes, but it's not the right tab now. You should go back to your website.
No. Yeah. I just need to
Yeah.
enable the web. All right, you see the screen now?
Yeah.
The operator. Awesome. Cool. So again, I'll review the quote, and I might add a new product. So let's say this is not the right one for this customer. I'll just add another product like this. And when see all the locations that they enter in and say, this looks good. He hasn't placed on the neighbor. It's not in the public road. Looks good on the noise levels, etc. Then I can publish the code and send him an email, and then give him a call and hear if he has any questions. So that means that I can give him a quote without visiting him in less than 5 minutes, approximately. And I can, of course, review all his what he entered in here, all the answers that he gave, and I can go through how the code looks on his end. So he gets an account. Well, let's see. I can show it over here. There's something wrong. Okay. I don't know why it's not loading, but I have one loaded here already. Yeah, no, here it goes. So he gets his own account in here, scaling in 9, where he can find his quote, and he can see his report, and he can buy it right away. And when after he purchased the heat pump, he can actually choose which date he wants to have it installed. And we created an automatic booking that books 3 different tradespeople for the day that he specified, or for 2 days with different machines. One plumber for 15 hours, electrician for 8 hours, and the day number 2 our cleanup guy and insulator for 2 hours. And that helped us a lot when we were at a peak where we did 115 sales a month, which is approximately 2 million euros in 1 month, which is not a lot compared to your countries, but in Denmark it's a big deal for for the total addressable markets of approximately 500,000 in Denmark. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's pretty much conclude my presentation. As I said, the whole idea was to just scale sales in heat pump installations, and this worked in the sales and marketing department, and we moved on to focus more on the operations department and have all the bookings and all the communication between the tradespeople work fine. So the quality is also the quality and the easiness of running that installation business is also easier. Yep, but I hope you liked it.
Thank you very much, Rasmus. Did I understand correctly? You're also doing solar cells and batteries and stuff like this?
Yeah, we do solar cells and batteries as well, but it's a difficult market in Denmark, going up and down. So we focus more on heat pumps at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, but you have a similar sales platform for that, or?
Yeah, it's the exact same system.
Yeah.
Just different customer journey. You can customize the customer journey to whatever you like, charges and so on.
Well, thank you so much. I'm somebody who's myself had a difficult customer journeys for heat pump installation, so I think this is to me this is quite a revelation, and I think it's at least inspiring to see how combining kind of e-commerce knowledge and approaches can increase productivity. So this leaves us with, let's say, a good time for a discussion. We're a bit ahead of time. We have quite a lot of. Oh, there's some, but you need to mute Rasmus or Tim. Yeah. We have quite an active debate and comments in the chat, and you're welcome to come back to some of those or pick those up. But perhaps to introduce, if you wouldn't mind, the speakers, let's have a first round based where if you could recap kind of what is the 1 or 2 most important factors in terms of how data can be accessed in Denmark or wherever you operate that has allowed your businesses to develop and thrive so far. Some quick comments on that, and I noticed that there were questions, not least also to Magnus about the utility data. So if you could elaborate a bit more on that in responding, Magnus, how what those 15 countries are and what those databases are and so on. But we start with Martin on the success factor so far that has enabled you to get where you are now.
Well, I mean, we have a long journey at Plans. We had a different name before. I mean, everywhere, at every step of the journey, getting more data is crucial for getting renovations going for different parties. And even though it is accessible, if it is accessible in many different places, it is then maybe very complicated to get for one individual person. So we know that to do a proper energy performance certificate, you would need data again from I would say 3, 4, 5 different sources from the governments at the municipal level to the regional or the national level. And all of that is incredibly important. I believe that for the major one thing that is quite unique we know from Denmark is the digitalization of all the again the construction permits, and that is absolutely that is crucial. But in general, the EPC data as well itself is incredibly accessible, and you can get the EPC from forever, and just getting that data and accessing all that data means you can do some analysis and understand, okay, if I show up in this building, what is most likely to happen, so you can save time and you can improve the quality. I mean, what we see as crucial with the technology is that we let the surveyors spend time on what they're good at and where they're not a monkey. So for example, measuring the walls and windows is something that's super easily done, but getting the material right of the wall is actually quite complicated. That's where they should spend more of their time. Or even, as we discussed in the chat, talking to customers. I think sometimes it's just people believe it's just about making the EPC. I believe the 5 minutes discussion at the end with the customer might actually mean the difference, because that could, it is quite complex. Most users don't understand buildings well, and just getting 5 minutes more talk to customers could actually trigger a lot more renovation that is happening today. So spend less time on the boring stuff that everyone can do, and spend more time on the stuff that actually does matter for renovation of buildings.
Yeah, thank you. And access to the EPCs and access to building permit information. I think that's a important takeaway. Tim, on your side, what's your reply to that? What's been the facilitating factor for you so far?
Well,
in terms of
first of all, I would second what Martin just said, that data is quite easy to get accessible to. And it's also somehow, from my point of view, a shout out to Vincent and a cadeau to him, because he also is like helping to getting all those data they collect into some kind of public databases where we can actually access them. And we have so much data collected so far. Just to give you an idea, which also surprised me, that since I'm starting to launch a new product to our portfolio owners in Denmark called lift management, where we're going to help them to make transparency within that area. We now can, through the public data, actually see how many lifts the portfolio owners have in their portfolio, and they don't even know that themselves. So there's so much data, and I think that we haven't even dug out half of it yet.
Thank you very much. And I think that makes me think about what Martin also said in his presentation. You could very easily add on data points and combine reports and so on once you have this kind of physical
Exactly.
model of the building.
And one of the beauty things about working with data points is that often you have 1 + 1 = 3, 4, and 5, because you merge one data set with another, and then you have a completely new data set which have a value you haven't seen before for a certain kind of audience, and that's the beauty about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Magnus. Your kind of 1 or 2 key takeaways on data access, and perhaps in particular this supplier data, because I think that's a surprise to many of us that you can access, even you mentioned the oil and biomass and so on. If you could comment a bit more on that.
I think one of the great benefits that we're building on is that the data is collected by governmental entities. That there have been several tests also earlier in exposing it easily, so making it public available through the Danish Building Hub. That project then didn't work out. So all the data is basically collected in public databases. It's bound by EU legislation, and it's has some years in the works. So the databases are there. Most of them are really dusty and have not been worked with. So there's a lot of cleanup. But the fact that if you get the right approval, you can access them and then use the benefit of that insight both to individual building owners, but also to create those better insights on what good actually looks like. I think one main request I would have, and that's also why we don't have the building hub in Denmark, there's not been a set definition of what is actually personalized data within utility consumption data. So when data from our perspective relates more to the building than to the person, that definition have not been made. And there have not been any legal determination on where that exact point is. So are we looking at personalized data if it's yearly consumption on a building, or if we go down to a monthly scale, or to a weekly? When we enter daily or hourly, we're definitely in the personalized sphere, but exactly where that line is crossed, nobody knows. And that's a major problem for us that want to basically set all this data free. It can be a huge value driver for basically a green growth engine for the entirety of Europe. The banks are really looking for this data. It will benefit them a lot, and us benefit all the ones of us that needs a mortgage. But yeah, we need a definition. When is billing data personalized data?
Thank you. I can say that at least from the energy markets perspective, the Commission is working with member states and TSOs and DSOs on electricity and gas to working on making utility, at least for electricity and gas, making it available and interoperable in an operable way, so you can very easily find, locate, and get access if you have consent from the owners, the data owners, to even quite granular data for the purposes of offering services. So this is something we continue working on. It's by nature complicated because the member states have very different setups, but it's certainly ongoing in the context of both the internal market legislation on energy, but also on the Data Act and the data space for energy. Thank you, Rasmus. What was the kind of key foundational enabler for you so far on the data side? You mentioned the BBR, I think. Anything else?
No, I think the BBR was the primary thing. We did use the connections to the eloverblik, the electricity consumption, where people can log in with the the national ID so we can retrieve their personal consumption of electricity. We use that for solar panels and the whole report and calculation with it there. Otherwise, it's mainly the buildings there. Statistical data on energy consumption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that also puts a spot on the value of this kind of digital identity verification, which is something we at EU level also work on under the eIDAS umbrella. It's national systems, but they have to comply with certain standards, and this is an important aspect, of course. Martin, yeah.
I did have a huge barrier collecting data for the district heating companies. We have approximately 400 district heating companies in Denmark, and they're our main competitor in terms of it's always about the district heating or heat pumps. So we did our own site where we kind of manually scraped from all the companies their prices and added on a price that's called in Danish districtheatingprices.dk. Fjernvarmepriser.dk. So that's just a huge manual effort, but I know all the consumption data is from Softmarket. I think was it Vincent who has it on his presentation? But yeah, the data is out there. It's just not available, all of it.
Okay. Vincent, do you want to come in and add anything on this?
Yeah, maybe 2 points on the utility data perspective. First of all, as Rasmus said, we're actually working right now on a common data model for district heating data. The issue is that, as Rasmus said, we have approximately 400 district heating companies, and they all collect data differently through different meters and through different data models, which means that when customers asks third parties to analyze the data, they have to use a lot of time on accessing that data. So we're trying to make a industry-specific standard on how to gather and how to access that data. So that might be easy in the future to gain access to, because it's a hugely important data, not only in the aspect that Rasmus mentioned, but also in the aspect of how to optimize the energy used in the building. I had a quite interesting talk with another Danish company, Entity, who are working with building owners in order to optimize how energy is used in their buildings. And they use real-time data from district heating meters in order to identify which buildings are operating correctly and which buildings are not. So these data can be hugely has a huge potential for energy savings. And also the point that Magnus made about consumption data in general, the discussion on when is utility data on electricity consumption or gas consumption or district heating consumption, when is that personal and protected by the GDPR, and when is it not? We're actually also, through the utility digitalization program, working on a recommendation on whether or not to not liberalize, but make consumption data open on a yearly basis. We believe we have some reason to believe that if you look at consumption data on a yearly perspective, then it might not be as protected by GDPR, because it doesn't really say anything about the personal consumption in the building, but it says a lot about the energy performance of the building. So we're looking closer to the use cases, to the societal benefits, and whether or not these data are protected by GDPR, and hopefully we will reach some conclusions on that in the late 2025 or maybe in the beginning of next year, which will enable a informed political discussion on whether or not to release those data on a yearly basis, because we actually have the infrastructure. The data is being collected by utility companies on the specific buildings energy consumption, but the data is protected in the BBR register. So we could quite easily make those data readily available if the political discussion and the law and the GDPR allows for it, which we are looking closer into. So yeah.
Super interesting. Thanks a lot. In my introduction, I mentioned that the member states are busy transposing the EPBD right now, but also hopefully preparing draft national building renovation plans for the end of the year, which the Commission will then have a look at and comment on. So my second question for all of you is, in that context, what would be your kind of main ask or recommendation or wish for people out there in the member states, in other member states than Denmark, to kind of enable and further facilitate the kind of services and businesses that you're engaged in? What would be your main your best recommendations on what should be done? And you're welcome, if you have specific information on specific countries, you're welcome to point that out as well, but also in general terms. So starting with you, Martin.
Yeah, the EPC is just not compliance. If it's just compliance about getting a letter, it is not helpful, in our opinion, to get to a net zero emission building stock. So you need to think further than just the bare minimum compliance agreement that was agreed upon by the politicians in the EU and the in the Council of Ministers, I guess, in the EU Commission, etc. You need to look at what is actually going to be, what is a tool that is going to be helpful to get to net zero emission buildings, and what is the data that you'll need to do that. And I can see more and more super cool tools that are built on the existing EPC, but if the data to start with is not helpful, every conclusion and insights that will be derived from the EPC will be wrong as well. And there's no amount of machine learning, AI, etc., that will help you solve that. So really ensure that you can do that. Also acknowledging that the technology right now is moving very fast. It could be a solution like ours or someone else, which means that the capture of data points that are required for the feasibility of the renovation will be more and more accessible. And you need to ensure that when that happens, and when it is rolled out in your country, that these technologies are not limited by what you put in place in the legislation. So it would be a shame if companies got less ambitious on what could be done, just because you are less ambitious, I guess, as a member state.
Yeah. So point basically allow competition to race to the top, basically, in terms of that, and also I noticed your response that it's not about getting rid of real physical experts or people, but it's putting them to allowing them to spend their time more productively.
That is exactly correct. We do not believe that you should get rid of the physical inspection. It's the opposite. If there are some things that can be gathered, remotely, like things about in Denmark, we have, for example, have access about the heating generation system. That is fine. But then it should not be that they don't have to do it. It could be that instead they spend more time again talking to the customer or figuring out climate risk, climate proofing, or electrical installation. So, for example, electrical installation is a very key component to understand if you can have solar panels, if you can have electric charger, if you can have a battery. And right now that is not collected in most EPCs, as far as I know. And that is an absolute crucial thing to know if your home will be future-proof, regardless of net zero emission proof, you could say. And this is the kind of data that is not related to energy consumption. It is, however, data that will make it relevant and will dramatically change the price of a solar installation, battery installation, electric charge installation. So you really have to think this through. What will actually be the data points that are useful for the renovation beyond just the kilowatt hour per square meter per year?
Thanks a lot, indeed. And of course, the EPBD does promote solar installations and contain provisions on EV chargers and so on. So it's already within the EPBD, even if not necessarily in the EPC. Okay. Tim, what's your take on it? What's your number 1 or 2 on your wish list?
First of all, I second Martin on his thinking about, I mean, it's very hard to build on a foundation which is not good. It's like building a reverse pyramid, and sometimes it will tip because the pointy end is pointing down. So we really need to have all the data installed first to build on top of that. Second of that, I think that and that's perhaps a little bit. I think it's sad for the conversation today that we haven't even talked about the embodied CO2. We haven't talked about LCA calculations or circular economy, because I really think that part is missing in this kind of discussion here. My point of view, and I know that we are blessed with the Danish EPCs, and we are gathering a lot of data, but in the end of the day, we could suggest that a certain building should change the windows to a 3-layer window, and then you would save this amount of CO2 in the end. But it doesn't calculate whether I bought those windows from Temu and that had embodied CO2, which is like twice the amount of what I would save. So I would very much like that we looked into the circular economic in the EPCs as well. That is my wish.
Thank you, Tim. Let me just respond briefly on this, because of course the new EPBD does dip its toes into that. But we have, or the legislator has included provisions on that. that EPCs will eventually, in a few years' time, have to start including whole life carbon information. And just for the information of all of you, we are the team. The team is very advanced in preparing a proposal for a union framework for calculating this, which we were tasked by the legislator to set out in the delegated act. So we are very close to consulting internally on a detailed Commission regulation on a union framework for whole life carbon calculations. And we are supposed to deliver this before the end of the year, and we are still working to try to succeed with that. So just to say that this is indeed not something that traditionally has been a focal point, but we are actually starting and in a pretty specific way, and already later this year. But I stepped in before Magnus. So what would your key asks or wishes for the implementation in other member states and in the building renovation plans? What would your asks be and suggestions, recommendations for those out there or those in the room that are involved in, or influencing that?
We think that it's really important that we put investments where they actually matter. So making sure that recommendations on a building are actually those that will have effects, meaning that we need a good way of really assessing the emission from a building if the purpose is to lower the emission of the building stock. So figure out locally how do we actually assess, that the directive allows for both UBC assessment and more consumption-based assessments on the building stock. Right now in Denmark, we see a huge issue that there's not enough EPC labeled buildings to actually put into good use. There's a lot of buildings that lack EPC. So figuring out a framework where get the quality up or the assessment on all buildings so you actually can detect the lowest performing buildings. And then secondly, intensify the financial sector even more to actually value the decarbonization or optimization of those buildings.
Okay, thank you. I mean, certainly for I think that on this question about identifying the lowest performing buildings is part of the homework for the member states under the new EPBD, because there is a there is a task there, both on the more specific to implement the minimum energy performance requirements for the non-residential part of the buildings, but of course also to have to meet the kind of milestones set out for the residential part of the stock. So I think this is something the member states will be looking at, and we have issued guidance when we announced the invitation for today's seminar. We also published guidance on ways of doing that, but it's clearly a big big job and still work in progress. Yes, Rasmus, do you want to comment on the wish list? You're muted. You're muted.
No, I don't work that much with these labels, to be honest. But I'll say, as I say to all the regulators and policymakers, that in general, try to keep it simple. Less details is always better. Bigger incentive, less detail, because sometimes it kills the process when there's too much details in all the requirements. So please be careful.
Yeah. Very, very, very clear. A very clear message. I think it's one that we fully take on board and agree with. And it's, as I said in the beginning, it is actually a big focal point of our political masters now. Simplification is really high on the agenda. And as I said, it's not about deregulation, but it's about recognizing that sometimes with good intentions, things have become too complicated.
Yeah. I can give an example on. I just got a task where they specified the temperature set on the heat pump for the buildings, and they specified a ton of other stuff. But they could have just told me how much energy they allow per square meter to be used for heating and the temperature at a certain outside temperature. given condition, then there's room for innovation. But they specified every single part of the job, which is sometimes very difficult from both sides. So
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool, but thanks for a good session.
Okay. And I'm seeing that there's been a lot of very lively discussion in the chat. I've noticed some remarks and discussion about let's say the EPBD, for instance, still being a directive and being the things being too difficult, too different in the member states. And there, perhaps I'd like to point out the EPBD is, of course, it's the fourth version that is still not implemented. It's still a directive, leaving member states a lot of freedoms and the obligation to transpose it into national requirements, taking into account the national specificities. But there was a certain convergence in many areas, including on the EPCs, including on the classes, including on the metrics and so on. So I think it's going in the right direction. I did see some questions about I think it was for Magnus or I'm not quite sure anymore, about whether you're already, because some of you showed the classes and you showed the Danish classes, but of course the new EPBD harmonizes the classes and also talks about net zero energy buildings. So to what extent are you already starting to build that concept of net zero energy buildings into your software and programs to kind of be able to, because some banks and institutional investors, they may want to specifically build products and portfolios with very high performing zero energy buildings. Anybody wants to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's natural when we have the raw data. Then the better raw data you have, the more advanced you can do, and the better your recommendations will be. So the way we look at it is that different people have different objectives. It could be financial objectives, carbon objectives, energy efficiency objectives, comfort for some people. And you need to account for all of these to ensure that, whatever way they want to renovate their home, it fits in. So for us, for energy renovation specifically, that means that we are building sort of MAC curve, so a marginal abatement cost curve, to get to a certain ladder, if this is what's important for you, where you can, because the path from a F to a C will be different than an F to a B. It could be that you start differently. Maybe you start with the windows, you start with a heat pump, and the heat pump might be in itself sufficient to get to the C, for example. So that's where we think at it. But we also don't hesitate bundling the energy renovations with other stuff. It could be, again, asbestos. It could be also things that are, hey, I would like to make a bigger window because that's nice for inner air quality, as was also discussed in the chat. There are more requirements now about light, about sound, etc. And these things also need to be part of the equation. And banks in general are never sad when you add more items to the bill that they can loan more money for. So I think that's the way we look at it. You cannot think as a homeowner. The homeowners don't think at energy renovation independently, and thus our job cannot be that either. We need to look at it, holistically. How does climate proofing, energy renovations, comfort, and all these things play together? And we know that when we start the journey, then it's easier to convince someone to get a heat pump once they have insulation, once they have solar panels. So start somewhere and then get there and on track.
Yeah, timing and trigger points are important. We know that for private families, but what, Magnus, what about real estate? How does that work? When are there particular moments where this information, just before ESG reporting, compliance reporting, or are there other types of trigger moments where timing matters when to get in there and with the messages and the intelligence?
Yeah, right now we see that in due diligence or acquisition of properties or big commercial properties, net zero buildings is a really defining matter. It's affecting direct pricing. We see both increase in the valuation of green buildings, needs to be either certified or verified green building. So a third party needs to go through the process of stating that this building is either following the taxonomy as a green building, or if you have fully data on a nation, then you can assess if it's to 15% green building. Like it's higher prices. It's something that is being negotiated in any acquisition from all the bigger commercial real estate owners. CRREM, so the carbon risk assessment tool for real estate framework started by the sector, is the most implemented one, and that's beginning to be a kind of requirement in a transaction. So you need to have your CRREM alignment, and that's basically Paris Agreement alignment on your building. Know exactly where your baseline year is, current consumption, and a forecast on where the property will be within the next 10, 20, 50 years. Most commercial real estate owners have between 10 and 100-year timeline that they're looking at. So any future risk needs to be built into their models now.
Okay.
If I can comment on the timing, I think that the clients, the portfolio owners we are working with are working on two areas right now. First of all, they are all very concerned about their potential stranded assets, which they have no idea as it is right now what to do about, especially the ones which are not in urbanized areas. And then we see, and I actually think that is quite positive, that the green wave are like rolling and it can't be stopped. And I think it's increasing every year. So we really feel a lust from the portfolio owners to do this, not only on a financial level, but also because they really want to do it to transform it into greener buildings. So the timing for the green transition, I actually think is here now.
The time is now, and it's never been a better moment, actually.
Yeah.
We will never get a better moment, no.
Yeah, tomorrow is even better than today.
Tomorrow is better than I accept that. I accept that. No, and can I ask, because well, you will have seen this week new European sanctions were proposed to actually move forward the phase out of Russian gas from Europe's supply. To what extent is that driving your clients? That kind of geopolitical situation. To what extent do you feel that comes into play with your clients?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, but, I mean, some people have a few people have more like I want to be independent if something fucks up, but some of our politicians are advocating for the use of biogas so people can stay using gas instead of heat pumps and district heating. For supposedly it's going to be cheaper, and people should have that. I think Denmark has not submitted a social. They don't have yet told where they're going to use the money from the ETS2. The point is that's there is a need for the politicians to also draw a course on where we are going, and I believe that has not been the case so far, in the sense that we saw in Denmark, and I think Rasmus can talk about that as well, a huge demand close to when Nord Stream exploded. Nord Stream 2 exploded back in 2022. And then immediately 3 weeks after, the demand like literally cratered and disappeared. And Denmark is very sensitive to price. We are almost all on real-time contracts, or close to real-time contracts. So price defines what people are going to do, and if there's some doubt about which course we're going for, and we were supposed to have a goal of getting rid of gas in all households by 2035. We are less than 10 years away. When they're like, people don't know, people are just going to do what they usually do because that's the cheapest and that works, and etc. Or at least they feel it's the cheapest. So I do not feel this is still a political problem that hasn't gone down to become a private problems that people consider. That's yeah.
Okay. Or people have a relatively short memory somehow.
Yeah, or not
Yeah, they
fast.
forget the burning platforms really rather surprisingly quickly, perhaps.
Yeah, a much better the way would be to drive incentive through tariffs. So lower the tariffs on electricity and increase it on gas. That would be a simple way of driving the incentive.
And not subsidies to biogas, which is
Exactly.
absolutely insane.
Or actually just say that biogas could be used for creating electricity and not heating in residential homes. That would be a way to do it. But yeah, but agree. The ambiguity in the messaging is really tiresome.
I would say on what you point about the prices, electricity and gas price for heat pumps, we know that's of course a critical factor. And there, the ETS2 that Martin mentions, the second emissions trade is, let's say, on the rails. It's coming, and it's combined with the social climate fund, precisely to kind of make it a fair transition as well. So that for those weaker households or poorer households that might be hit by the higher electricity prices, because gas prices, because or oil prices, because there will be a CO2 price on heating fuels, um, driven by a European level market, the ETS2. Um, they may be compensated through support decided at national level, but guided within the framework of the Social Climate Fund at European level. So, but it's true, quite a few member states are late in submitting these plans. So it remains to be seen what member states will actually prioritize that. We spoke a bit about harmonization and about our differences and so on. I just wish to perhaps use the occasion to stress that, of course, before the summer, when we announced the guidance package, we presented a lot of detailed documents, guidance documents, with good advice and recommendations and some interpretation of the EPBD provisions, aimed at the member states, but also the stakeholders, of course, in the member states, giving the Commission's quite detailed understanding of the EPBD provisions, what each of the specific provisions require, how it can be put into practice nationally. They are quite detailed documents aimed at really experts in the different fields, I would say, and principally those in charge of transposing it nationally. But they do contain a lot of details on things like EPC's calculation methods and so on. And I would just invite everybody who work with this to kind of have a look at the relevant parts of that, because I think if you take a good notice of if member states, the more that they take good notice of the Commission's guidance in this field, the more convergence we can actually have, and the less differences we'll have, and the simpler it will be for everybody. So this is a little recommendation or invitation from my side and from the team side to please do remember the guidance we've issued there. We have also, and that goes also, there was a question on indoor environmental quality earlier in the chat. We've not really had time to talk about this today, and I think none of your companies are really focusing on it, but it's something that's also, just like whole life carbon, now has specific provisions in EPBD, and there is guidance on that as well in that package. And then, of course, there's an implementing act on transfers of data to the European Building Stock Observatory, because and there's been a lot of detailed work with the member states and with the colleagues at EU level here to make sure that as member states build up these national databases, that we also benefit from that to having more up-to-date, more comparable, more granular data on the European building stock to inform progress and to inform policy making at European level. So let this also be an invitation for you to check what's there, because of course there's detailed rules on what member states must transmit to the EU Building Stock Observatory, which also goes some way in kind of creating convergence and a common understanding of key metrics and indicators and so on. And it's I think there is a link to it in the chat. Otherwise, Bogdan will put it shortly. And this is perhaps Vittoria or Marco. Can you put on the last slide again, just to share? Yeah. If you want to reach any, if you want to find any of these documents, you can here are the resources to follow what we're doing on buildings in DG Energy. And I would say today has been very much a Danish focus, but we of course work across the EU and with people across the EU. And we, as soon as the 2nd of October, we will have another webinar a bit like this, 2 hours on a Thursday, to talk about the EPBD in practice and the role of building performance data for member states. And there we will have other presentations from other member states, France, Spain, Portugal, others, and we will have people working with the Building Stock Observatory specifically, and also some EU-funded projects, and people from CINEA, our executive agency that runs a lot of the buildings-related projects funded by EU funding. So that's a little commercial for that. I presume there's been a lot of the audience today that's interested in data and might want to check in on that. But let's have a last, any final comments, colleagues, or Vincent, you want to have any final comments before we end for today?
Well, no, I just want to say a big thank you to all of the presentators today. Thank you for your time, and also to all the participants. Thank you for listening in. I don't think I have any other perspectives right now, but thanks a lot for allowing me to join as well.
Good. Well, thank you for supporting and co-hosting this, Vincent. Thank you to the Danish presidency. And indeed, thank you to all our speakers. It's been very inspiring, I think. This was a little snapshot. It was by no means representative, but a snapshot of what's possible in different aspects of this great transition that we're undertaking collectively. So thanks a lot, and keep up the good work. It's very inspiring, and I'm sure we'll hear more from all of you. And with those words, I would like to end this webinar, and I would like to thank the whole team, especially Vittoria and Marco, for logistical support, for Dordeline for registrations, and we hope to see you in future webinars or in other occasions here in DG Energy. So thanks a lot, and stay in touch. This will no doubt be talking about data and buildings for many years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you.